Welcome to the Imperfectly Empowered podcast with leading DIY lifestyle blogger Anna Fulmer, where women are inspired with authentic stories and practical strategies to reclaim their hearts and homes by empowering transformation, one imperfect day at a time.
Welcome to another episode of the Imperfectly Empowered podcast. I am your host, Anna Fulmer. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Stephen Scoggins. From living on the streets and contemplating suicide to launching what would become a multi-million-dollar construction company, Stephen Scoggins is an award-winning author, podcast host, and entrepreneur passionate about using his story to inspire others to experience transformation in their lives. He hosts the world-renowned Transform You Live event dedicated to inspiring you to go from stuck to unstoppable and exceed your wildest expectations. Featured on Forbes, Entrepreneur, Thrive Global, New York Wire, NBC, ABC, Evan Carmichael podcast, to name a few. Welcome, real life inspiration and truly one of the most generous people I have ever met, Stephen Scoggins. Well, Stephen, welcome to the Imperfectly Empowered podcast. We were just talking about your amazing jacket and how lovely it looks. It's leather. For anyone wondering, let's just get that out in the open right away.
Makes you just want to touch it all day.
And he's just going to pet himself the entire interview because it's not weird at all.
You gotta have fun, right? Gotta make it fun.
You do have to have fun. Leather makes life much more fun. I want to share, I first read your story in a Forbes article. It was published in 2020. And I remember it so specifically because the headline, if I'm recalling it correctly, said something like homeless to $100 million business or something very eye-catching. And I remember reading through the story and thinking, wow, I loved your story. I loved the message. I loved seeing all the paths that kind of led you to where you are today. And something that I want to share so that people can hear and see this interview through the right lens is this is a guy who is truly practicing what he preaches. He lives out his message and I've benefited from that. We had connected and Stephen barely knew me. And you heard that I was, in the very early stages of wanting to create a podcast. And you said, hey, let's set up a time. I would love to show you through Zoom, like the products that I use, the equipment that you're going to need, some tips. And that meant so much to me because your responsibilities are great. Your influence is great. And it's important for people to understand, I think from the very beginning, when they hear what you're saying, that we don't always have the privilege of meeting the people that we admire so much. And you have influenced thousands, probably even millions at this point. So I'm telling you right now, if you've not had the honor of meeting him, he is truly practicing what he's preaching. He is incredibly generous with his time, his resources, his knowledge. So I just want to start that out because I think it's important for people to not just hear your words, but really hear them. This is somebody who's practicing his message.
Well, first of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure what to say. I'm officially speechless. So interview's over.
Hey, perfect. That was easy. Love it. Yeah. Well, when we talk about, again, we go back to that Forbes article, people see that headline, homeless to $100 million business. And as so often happens in our lives, we quickly want to focus on that $100 million business part. We want to see, okay, well, how do you get $100 million business? But what we so rarely get the opportunity to highlight is the messy, imperfect process that actually got you to where you are. And in fact, is probably a huge reason you are where you are. So I want to press rewind a little bit and tell us about some of those younger years and how it even resulted in you being homeless and on the streets.
Oh my gosh. That's such a long story. It's funny. I try each time to condense it, and it's still like we'll ramble on for hours. I think I grew up a lot like a lot of folks in the U.S. today, and even back in the 70s, or how was it? I was born in the 70s. That's what it was. It was the 70s.
And you are looking good. That leather jacket, folks.
Appreciate that big time. But I grew up in a broken environment. Mom and dad not super like tied together. Dad chasing alcoholism. Mother grew up in abuse, and and then of course all that stuff takes toll on somebody until you're literally taught how to kind of filter that information and filter that existence into something better, right? By the time I was 9 years old, I was raised by my grandmother, single grandmother. Both parents were out kind of chasing themselves and trying to figure themselves out, which, it's funny because, now I'm like, well, that's all I do for a living is try to figure myself and other people out, which is kind of funny. Yeah, but that was kind of like the early days. And then my grandmother passed away at 11. I moved in with my dad, got introduced to the construction industry. My little brother went to go live with my mom down in Florida. So kind of like, child separation kind of things, abandonment things, you kind of work through. And lo and behold, I met Steve Meyer, who was my first mentor. Now I've had lots of other mentors since then. I do talk about him a lot because obviously your first one is like you're almost like your major pivot, right?
Yeah.
And he's my dad's employer. So we were sitting out one afternoon, and I was working on a construction crew with my dad framing houses, and it was hot. And Steve had done this before. He just motioned me down several times, and so I'm like, any reason to go get the AC, I'm good. Like, just put me in the car, let me breathe the AC. Well, in this particular instance, he asked me a couple of questions, and the first of which, the more and more I've mentioned it on the more and more shows that I've been on recently, it's like, does this really help people? Does this really resonate with people? And I was like, you know what? It's got to, because it's the truth, right? And Steve asked me, the first question he asked me was, he goes, what's the difference between a rich man and a poor man? And I wanted to, I said some stupid, foolish thing like money. Right. Thinking, well, rich guy has money, poor guy doesn't. Money, end of story. And he kind of snapped at me. He said, absolutely not. It's the way they think. And he could have stopped right there, and he already had my attention. But in this particular instance, one of the things that he did was he pushed a little further and asked me one more follow-up question. And he said, do you want to continue thinking like your father, or do you want to learn to think like me? Now, what happened was, in my brain, I had this Rolodex in my head of all the moments with my father, all the moments with Steve. And, by this time I'd already seen Steve be a very frugal, very, very gifted, very, very bold businessman. And I'd also seen him be incredibly generous. It wasn't uncommon for him to donate money at will. No one would know it. Like, he never bragged about it. He never said a word. And this one instance that I talk about all the time that kind of plays in my head is, we were at a place called Murray's Barbecue, which was over off of Pool Road in here in North Carolina. It doesn't exist anymore. They got obliterated a few years back. But one afternoon we went there for like an early dinner. He was there. He overheard the waitress that was waiting on him talking about like just being a single mom and being difficult. And she wasn't talking to him. She was talking to one of her friends like across the way, and he overheard it. He took out $1,000 cash out of his wallet and put it under the basket of hush puppies. And he and his wife Lona quietly exited the door. And here was this young lady, comes over, discovers $1,000 and just weeps. Like, she completely loses herself, from everything from, I can pay my light bill, I can pay like, she just started rattling off all the ways in which it was going to help her, that moment always stuck with me. And I swore to myself, and in that time, I had no idea I'd ever be a person of having any kind of level of resource. But I remember saying, if I ever get to that chance, if I ever get to that place, I want to be just as generous. So I had these moments that are like Rolodexing in my head, right? Well, that continued on, that mentorship, that kind of opened my mind to new possibilities, because, my father lost his business a few years earlier. And I remember him telling me one time, he said, Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by. Right. And then it got me thinking, it's like, am I believing a lie, like what my father told me, or am I believing possibilities, which is what Steve told me? And I find a lot of us get trapped in that mundane, like we for some reason, it's easier for us to listen to the voice that says we can't, rather than to believe in the voice that says we can, which is kind of a transition thing. But
it's safer. It's safer to live there. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally is. And, I just, it kind of continued. I wish I could tell you that like everything transformed from that one moment, but lo and behold, I had to drop out of high school to help my dad take care of the family. We had lost the cars, we had foreclosure, we had lost 2 repossessions. And then, he struggled, and he was working as hard as he possibly could. No harm, no foul. I mean, he literally worked as hard as he possibly could. It's probably where my work ethic comes from, because it's pretty insane. But at the end of the day, I got fed up. I woke up one school day morning. It was the tail end of my junior year. And I went to go flick the light switch, and it wouldn't come on. Right. And then I went to go turn the water on the knob, and it wouldn't get hot. Right. And then once again, our electricity had been shut off, and it wasn't like the first time. It happened several times. And I finally had enough's enough. I went from there, dropped out of high school, kind of got the family stabilized, went and bought a car to buy here, pay here a lot, worked my butt off, got to know Steve a little better. And around the age of 19, Steve gives me an opportunity to go into business for myself. He literally buys me all my tools, all my equipment, everything that I need to get going. Like I said, he's one of those people that, much like my grandfather and several others, that mentored me when I didn't even know I needed to be mentored.
Yeah.
Like they were just doing it because that's who they were.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, that business just goes from 0 to 100 really, really fast. I mean, I'm doing really well, making a bunch of money. I'm 19 years old. I've never been taught how to handle money. I blew it on everything under the sun. I bought the sports car. I flipped $100 bills at the pool hall because that's where we used to hang out, that and putt golf and games. And, I thought I was the it guy. I wanted to prove everybody to myself that they were wrong because they told me I'd be a failure if I had to drop out of high school, not knowing what I was really up against at home. And that started it. And then within about a year's time of that, I had ultimately lost everything. From one bad decision to another, one, tied to bad relationships, one tied to bad financial decisions, one by, turns out you're not supposed to give your credit cards to people that aren't you. And,
oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that last night. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
That would explain it.
Yeah. Right. And all of a sudden bills start piling up. But long story short is, I've been asked recently, how did you become homeless? And it's been more of a recurring theme. And I want to be honest and transparent with people when I answer that question. Yes, it was a bunch of bad decisions. Yes, there was a bunch of bad circumstances, but ultimately the reason I became homeless and then stayed homeless for any length of time was because of my pride, right? It was because of my inability to admit that I needed help, my inability to admit to myself that I had fallen, so to speak, my inability to admit to myself that I was becoming the very thing that Steve Meyer didn't want me to become.
Yeah.
And, not too long ago, it shook out that I was kind of had this weird moment. I was in a public restroom and I was just staring at myself in the eyes. In fact, it's one of the things I do at my live event. I have a mirror thing that we do at some of my live events. And and it comes directly from this moment. And I'm staring at myself, looking at myself as deeply as I possibly could in my eyes. And I said, how the hell did you get here? Like, what are you doing? And about the time that question popped over, all these other things that Steve had told me, right? Be willing to do today what others won't, so you can have tomorrow's what others don't. Focus on creating a legacy that outlives you. The greatest purpose in life you'll ever have is serving the person you used to be. And myself and a handful of Rory included, like, say that 10 different ways from Sunday, but it's what I call a life truth, right? So ultimately, my foolishness and immaturity got me to a place where I needed a massive humbling. And I'd love to tell you that's the only one that I've had, because I'm one of God's more stubborn children. But
listen, you'd have a boring story otherwise. So
yeah. So I mean, I'll fast forward it just a little bit, but when about a year and a half went by, a lot of soul searching, I found my faith, found my identity to a degree, even though I didn't have anything. It's kind of one of those things that you understand the value of everything when you understand that you have nothing. Yeah. Right. It's this weird place to be. And Steve Meyer gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. It was a hot summer night, a hot summer afternoon again. I got back on his framing crew. Long story, we don't have time to jump into in detail, but in essence, he gave me a chance, but that's all he gave me. He wouldn't buy me tools. He wouldn't buy me equipment. He wouldn't get me help. He wouldn't get me insurance. And my father and I literally built the scaffolding and things that I needed for my first construction business, which is one of the 7 companies that I own, and literally built it out of trash piles. And that's when my first business was built. That business alone, employs several hundred people across a couple states. And, it's been a blessing. It taught me how to build myself. It taught me how to lead or taught me to become a better leader, because I did that wrong for a while. And, so it's a very complex story, but at the end of the day, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why I was here, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I've discovered that anybody can literally create any level of momentum if they can just answer those 3 questions.
I want to highlight an element of your story that, mental health right now is such a huge issue, more than it ever has been. As somebody who's worked in the emergency department for over 10 years, I can testify to the very real issues that exist for so many men and women. And COVID has exacerbated it and kind of taken small cracks in our mental health and just made them gaping.
Yeah.
Ravines that are so hard for people to get past. And now in younger people, adolescents especially, we're seeing such a rise in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment in that story and in those chapters of your life that you were very seriously contemplating ending your life. And I want to specifically talk to people right now who either that was you, maybe it is you, maybe you feel like you're on that verge. Tell me a little bit, I realize this was many years ago now, but tell me a little bit about what was going through your head at that time, because even though you had so many words of truth from people in your life, you still were on that point of feeling like this isn't worth it. Tell me a little bit about your mindset at that time. And then you also mentioned there was a divine encounter that ultimately pulled you back off the ledge. So talk about those two things for me.
Well, so a couple different things. My life, and I feel like, and I'm a guy, I know I'm not the only one, right? That's the whole reason we do what we do now. But early on with all the financial stress, trying to take care of my grandmother at 9, trying to take care of my little brother, trying to then operate in the construction industry and then pay the bills and help my dad out of situations and all this kind of stuff. I wanted to join I just thought, hey, I need a way out. So I thought I would join the military. So I put all my eggs in one basket, right? I guess what some say, go burn the boat and make sure you have no way back. Right.
Right.
The problem is I wasn't in a healthy place to begin with. I wasn't eating right. So I had a buildup of toxins, I'm sure in my brain. I had limiting beliefs out the wazoo, because I was judging my entire life based on the moment of life that I was in, not realizing that that's a season. Any level of struggle is temporary. If you look at it as if it's temporary, if you look at it as if it's permanent, then it ultimately becomes permanent. But inevitably the Navy wouldn't have me. I had already kind of more or less gotten rid of all my belongings, what little bit I had. And I remember leaving the MEP station at 440 and Capitol Boulevard here in Raleigh and walking. And I can't say if it's 10 minutes or an hour, but I just remember I literally could not see because I was crying so hard.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't see. And as I walked up to the bridge, one of the things that I was hearing, the easiest way to do it, and to me, this is realistic, even though I'm going to use a kind of a metaphor, which is, you ever seen the cartoons where you got, Bugs Bunny or whatever, and he's got the little angel Bugs Bunny on one side and he's got the little devil on the other. That is literally what was going on inside of my brain. The voices of negativity, the voices of not having worth, the voices of being a constant failure, being a constant screw up, being a burden to everybody. All of those things were basically felt like they were being shouted inside of me, and then in the quiet little moments, I would hear like this little whisper that kind of was like, no, he's lying. You do have value. You are worth it. It's just a tough place. You'll get through it. Just keep going. And I think a lot of times lies have to yell so they get your attention. Where truths often whisper because they want you to pay attention. Right. So as I'm looking through that, I'm going through that moment and walking up to the bridge. I was very much in a catastrophic state. Crisis moment is an understatement. And to anyone who's feeling like they don't have worth, or they're a burden to people, or their hurt is so much that they can't absorb it, I would tell you that 1, you're worth it. 2, you're not a burden. And 3, you just got to find your way, right? You got to find your way and find your voice. And unfortunately, sometimes the only way to find your voice and to find your way is to go through the very thing that you're facing, but going through it with an open mind of possibilities, like almost like that excitement, like, oh, what can I learn from this? Not why does this always have to happen to me? But I was very fortunate. I picked up I had this broken Nokia 5160 phone with a cracked screen. And this is long before we could, obviously had glass that we could touch on and all kinds of stuff. And I picked up the phone, tried to dial somebody, busy signal, answering machine. Yes, the big block answering machines that used to have to push a button to hear somebody play, right? And then every time the phone wouldn't get answered, the louder thing would actually be louder, like the yell or whatever of failure. And I told you no one cares, and and all this kind of garbage. Well, my fifth phone call, a woman by the name of Susan Batts picked up the phone.
Were you calling the same person all this time, or 5 different people?
5 different people.
Yeah.
Tried to call my mother, my father, my grandfather, and then my best friend that I had at the time. Well, I still have him. He's still a good friend. And then Susan was my high school girlfriend's mother. So my high school girlfriend's mother, she was another person like Steve Meyer to me. When I would get into her presence, she couldn't help herself but to try to encourage me and teach me and nurture me and empower me. And I think she knew I was lacking that, like in the environment that I was growing up in. And it was interesting because she's one of those firecrackers, right? She had an old cigarette raspy voice, kind of thing. And she tried to convince me to tell her where I was at, and I wouldn't tell her. And then, long story short, a lot of truth came out of that moment. And it was a crucible moment for me. And I would encourage everyone to not to go to the place where you feel like you want to end your life or do something foolish to yourself, but go to the place where the crucible is so much that you can say, what can I do now to just make a tiny shift? Because what I didn't understand was she was about to give me 11 words that ultimately would set the tone for the next 30 years of my life. And I had no idea what that would be. I also had no idea of the level of adversity that I would face, even all the way up until our latest live event that we had, a couple of weeks ago. And she basically had me screaming this stuff at the top of my lungs. I was sitting on top of the bridge, a little tubular thing. It was chilly. I was watching the smoke escape from your mouth and the diesel fumes and the corn, the horns are honking everywhere. And of course she could hear all of it. And after refusing to tell her where I was at, she would actually say, she said, well, fine. Promise me tomorrow morning you'll call me at 9 a.m. I said, no, I can't do that. I love you. I just want to tell you how much I love you. And all the garbage were really, a lot of times we as people, when we're hurting that bad, we want to say, I want someone to care, but I don't want to tell you I want you to care.
Yeah.
Right. And long story short is, she basically says, well, repeat after me. And she said, this too shall pass. I was like, whatever, this too shall pass. What comes next will be greater. What comes next? She would say it like you mean it, like screaming at the top of her lungs. And I would, in a roundabout way, I would almost give anything to just like be an outsider looking at this moment and seeing myself on a freezing bridge yelling at the top of my lungs. I'm serious, but what she did, I mean, what she did was she took my negative circumstance and my negative thought pattern and she interrupted it. Right. She changed my emotional state in a blink of an eye. I don't know that she knew that she was doing neurolinguistics or, any kind of brain work or neuroscience or whatever. But the reality was, it was a week later is when I started that business, the one that became, so if you take everything all rolled up in together, finding my faith along the way, I literally found my faith at the litter box. So it was like homelessness, trying for the military into not going to happen, almost take my life into cleaning a litter box for $50, finding my faith to getting a second chance with Steve Marrick. And then everything else has been right. Yeah. And so I would tell someone who's maybe in that struggle point, one, know you're not alone, because you're not. A lot of us have been there, even though we're not really articulating it. 2, if you need somebody to talk to, hit me up on Instagram. Like, I'll be glad to talk to you, because you do have value. And sometimes I have actually thought, like, what if I had listened to the loud yelling voices of fear and failure and worth and burden and all this kind of garbage? Like, I wouldn't have been able to travel the places I've traveled to. I wouldn't be the father that I'm able to be today. I wouldn't be able to be a husband. I wouldn't be able to be a business owner. I wouldn't have written books. I wouldn't be speaking. Like, all of these different things that you can't see because you're in the moment. Yeah. So why not give yourself the position of curiosity and just say, I wonder what could be if I just face this thing. Yeah. And see what happens.
I love that concept of put yourself in a position of curiosity, because there's this sense that, exactly what you were told, this too shall pass and what's next will be greater. And boy, wouldn't that be a curious thing to find out, like, what is next?
Yeah.
But you got to stick around. You got to stick around. And it is, you're not an island. You're not living on an island. You're surrounded by people. And I know there's many people that still feel very alone despite being surrounded, but all it takes is one person, and don't hesitate to reach out, especially when it's being offered as it is right now. I think the other thing that I want to highlight here is on the flip side, I want to speak to what was the mom's name? What was her name?
Her name was Susan Batts. Ironically, she had a nickname.
Susan.
She had a nickname. So we had
the jacket's coming off for this nickname.
Yeah, I'm burning up over here.
Where's our music?
Sorry, guys. I'll put the jacket back on later. Yeah, her nickname was Mamawama. She nicknamed me
Mamawama. All right.
Mamawama. I was, her daughter would take quite a bit of time to get ready. And our dates at the time consisted of being at her mother's house, ordering pizza and watching Ren and Stimpy. So that was our date, but she would still go upstairs and act like we were going out to a fine dining restaurant and stuff, which, hey, great. But would leave me a lot of time with Susan. And one afternoon, Susan goes, "You're just so sweet as sugar. I'm going to call you Sugar Wooga." And I said, "Well, fine then. I'm going to call you Mamawama." And it stuck. So yeah, so she's known in the book as Mamawama. But yeah,
I love that. So speaking also to the Susans and Mamawamas out there, because, there's also a lot of us in the position of having kids who, I am not at this moment, but there are probably many women listening or men listening who have children who may be struggling with mental health issues or know of other kids or of friends, or maybe as people older than you struggling with mental health. And I think the other thing I hear from that story is that you have no idea in whose life you could be Susan. And that sense of being intentional to speak truth into people's lives. And you don't have to have the perfect phrase. I just think this is how God works all of the time, is he uses words that we say when we have no idea they're going to pull such a punch. I mean, I could tell my own stories of how that is true. And, it may seem so little to you, but you have no idea how it could be supernaturally used to be that pivot point in somebody's life. So I guess I say that also to encourage, all of our friends listening and watching, that don't hesitate to communicate. If you're thinking it, say it. Some people are really bad at that, but I just want to encourage you that even if you struggle with communicating or giving affirming words to people, do it, because you have no idea how it might be that pivot point for somebody. So you're thinking a positive thing, just say it. I know it's hard for some people, but just say it. Because it really could make all of the difference. And you could be that Mamawama.
Or that daddy waddy or something like that. Anyway.
Or something like, man, we could go on a rabbit trail there. We will keep ourselves from digging a hole too deep.
Yeah.
You have accomplished so many things over the years, and your story is truly inspiring. And I love highlighting that the messy parts of it, which really in the end you realize are crystal clear. It feels messy in the moment, but hindsight vision is always 2020. So I love being able to see how that has so clearly transformed. What would you say over all of these years? One of my favorite questions, if you could sum up the key to success in one word, what would it be?
One word, or can I use two?
It's always more than one. It's okay.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's actually 3 words.
That's okay. Go for it.
Never give up. Never give up. At the end of the day, the very thing that you think is trying to kill you is actually the very thing that's actually building you. It's the thing that's creating your version of your story. It's the thing that's teaching you the most about yourself. We don't learn anything from our, I don't feel like we really truly learn a lot from our successes, things that we get, that we accomplish that other people say, "Oh, that looks amazing. Congratulations." Fancy stuff. Ooh, right. We've learned far more about ourselves from the places in which we think we're never going to get back up from. And, it doesn't have to be sitting on a bridge to feel like you're never going to get back up. It could be a failed relationship that you thought that person was the one. Like you just believe with all your heart they were the one. It was going so good. And all of a sudden the rug's out from under you. You're not even sure how you ended up there. It's the getting passed over for a promotion. Again, when you feel like you're working about as hard as you possibly can, but having no clarity on what to do next. Right. And I think at the end of the day, I think the number one thing that I think has allowed me to keep pushing forward more than anything else is knowing that God's got it all under control.
Right. Amen.
Like no matter what I think it is,
right,
he's got it. right?
Mm-hmm.
He already saw what I'm now doing when I was the homeless kid or sitting beside the litter box. He already knew all that. He already spoke that into existence. And there has to be a healthy level of faith, knowing that if you don't give up, you will get to experience the very thing that has been spoken over you. I don't know if that's clear enough, but I think that's where my heart goes anyway.
I think it's stepping into the God-given purpose is what I'm hearing you say. It's that sense of the other piece that I think you're communicating with. I'll consolidate it, but I think there's also a degree of humility. It's a humble sense of, I don't have it all together. You mentioned pride, you felt like is ultimately what kept you from succeeding at the time, you know, and I also have seen it in my own life, this sense of humbly recognizing I don't have it all together. And that there's beauty in that. It's not actually a problem. That is the solution. The sooner that we can recognize we are imperfect. I mean, that's what I'm all about here is, you know, as soon as you own that sense of humility and imperfection and embrace it, is truly when we empower transformation. And I think it also gives you then that strength to never give up. And it also takes the focus off of ourselves and puts it onto other people, which you exemplify so well, that service-based mindset. So one of the other things that I love to ask at this point is, if you could achieve one thing yet in your lifetime, personal, professional, could be ridiculous or very profound, what would it be?
It's a great question. I want to be a Steve Marrick for 1 million people.
Okay, who's that?
So Steve Marrick is the mentor that I mentioned earlier.
The mentor. I didn't hear his last name before.
I want to be the person who can kickstart or light a fire under somebody. Yeah. Who has no idea what they're really capable of. You know, Steve Marrick believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He poured into me even when I wasn't listening. He poured into me even when I was like stubborn and like, and you know, I've got a young man that works with me now. His name's Connor, and Steve's granddaughter came one afternoon to come tour our facility, my live event center. And I was just showing around the building. Of course, you know, she's seeing her grandfather's words on the walls, and she's hearing my team members talk, and they're using slang that he used to say, of course, that I say, that, you know, they picked up. And so she's kind of like already in this awe, just really cool place of awe, you know, because her grandfather actually, you know, made a difference in my life, but other lives as well. Well, Connor walks up to her, and I introduced the two of them and say, hey, you know, hey, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so. And she goes, well, what do you do for Steven? He goes, well, I'm in charge of trying to figure out the digital marketing side to help him kind of get out there. I believe in him, da, 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 da. She goes, oh, that's cool. And then he looks at her and then points at me and says, he's my Steve Marrick. Aww. And he and I both started like, ooh, and like, you know, kind of thing. Cause he didn't, I don't.
And for those people listening, Connor is, tell us who Connor is. So people.
Yeah. So Connor is one of my team members, who is now my son-in-law, who was not my son-in-law a year ago, but is now my son-in-law and the father of my granddaughter. Haley. So, but yeah, he's been with me now for almost 5 years. I met him as a kid. He was so, I mean, everybody was asking me one time, she goes, why do you have the patience for this? I said, because he is me 20 years ago, like almost verbatim. Like, and I think back to all the times Steve should have thrown in the towel with me and he didn't. So, yeah.
That's really sweet. So you want to be Steve Myrick.
Yeah.
Steve Myrick to 1 million people. I have absolutely no doubt that is going to happen if it hasn't already.
Thank you.
I have no doubt.
Thank you. Well, I'm hoping to get there with confirmation, right? You know.
Yes, so. I understand that. Absolutely. It's going to happen. I have no, and then we'll have to bring you back on. We'll have to bring Steve on. Bring you and Steve on.
I wish we could, but Steve passed in 2003.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he got to see my first business thrive, and get to, you know, high 7 figures, which was nice. He never got to see the author side, the speaker side. He never got to watch me on podcast. He never got to, like, all this kind of stuff. So like I said, you already said this, but we're all capable of being a Steve Marrick to somebody.
Yeah. Amen.
Right. We're all capable of that. It's whether or not we open our heart to that. Yeah. Right. You had mentioned something early on just a second ago, and I don't mean to pivot on you.
Oh, no worries.
It's in my heart. When you go and ask somebody, how are you doing today? Be sincere about the ask. And then every time you add, I heard this from somebody, I don't know where I picked it up from, but I think it's helped. But when you say, hey, how are you doing today? And they go, oh, I'm okay. Stop for a second and say, no, how you're really doing. Mm-hmm. Like it imagine, you know, all of a sudden the walls come down. It's kind of like going to go grocery or going to go buy a car or something. Can I help you? Oh no, I'm just looking. No, and you're like, I think I want this car, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the same it's kind of the same framework. And another little cool trick, I'll do this. I assume this is going to be on YouTube as well, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna give everybody just a quick exercise. And so what I've done is I've drawn a single square, and I've broken it up in four quadrants, if you will. I had this interesting epiphany called the Quadrance of Conflict. And if you're not sure if someone's doing really well and you can't really get it out of them, just kind of offer and say, hey, I want to do something. I want to do this little exercise with you. I learned it on a podcast that Anna did just like long ago. I want to make sure that I do that. And inside of one of the quadrants, I want you to write the word financial. Okay. And the other quadrant, I want you to write the emotional, spiritual, right? And then physical. Okay. I stumbled on this by accident, by the way. I was doing a keynote for the U.S. Marine Corps, and they asked me about the suicide portion of my story. And I said, well, let's do this thing. And here's what we did. At any given time, just have them on a piece of paper, sit down with them on the phone or whatever. Say on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing financially? Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing emotionally? All right. Spiritually, physically. Here's an interesting thing. Most people are 5 and above in most areas, right? And they're typically really strong in one of the 4. Like a lot of folks, and especially in the circles that I've been, they're very financially successful, but they struggle emotionally, right? Relationships, etc. But when you have, 7 to 10 in most of the boxes, you're in a good place. You're like, okay, life's good. I got some adversity, but I can move on. When you start getting to where you have 5s and below in multiple boxes, you all of a sudden see an increased level of depression and anxiety, right? So you don't tell them this is where you're taking them. You just say, draw the quadrants, let's do the numbers. Because here's what happened. I had this young Marine, he stood up in the crowd after we got done doing the exercise. And he said, sir, and he had tears in his eyes. He said, I'm curious. What do you do if you only have 2s or 3s in all 4 boxes? I looked at it and said, come up here, buddy. We're gonna get you some help. And he just started crying.
Oh,
right. If you give people the permission to feel that which they're actually feeling, you just give them permission to kind of express it. And then you give them a framework to kind of bring it to the surface. It's much easier to deal with. That one little cheat sheet can be done, for trying to keep you on your goals, but more importantly, it can also keep you out of trouble. Yeah. Right. Because if you have 2s and 3s in all 4 of those categories, I think you need to get professional help just to make sure you stay safe. Because like we've already mentioned, like what comes next will be greater.
Right.
So, anyway.
It's a beautiful example. I mean, we employ this in medicine all the time. It's a scale. It's, we might not have tons and tons of research behind it, but what you are doing is exactly right. It's this idea of helping to quantify things that we can't verbalize. In a cerebral way. And I want to make sure that we include all of that on our show notes as well, because I think that's beautiful. And everybody that is watching it or listening to it needs to mentally think through those boxes and rate yourself. It's also a great thing to ask your spouse. I'll throw that out there as well. And your children, even. Maybe financial, you could replace with psychological or something. But I would also highly encourage you to ask your children those questions as well. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, stay tuned for a speed round of This or That with Steven. We're going to learn a little bit more about him, and we're going to hear more of his expert advice on getting rid of the poverty mindset, going from stuck to unstoppable, and learn more right when we come back. You have tried it all. Worried you will never lose the extra weight or reclaim the energy you once enjoyed? Want to achieve fat loss without spending hours in a gym or eliminating entire food groups from your diet? Well, now you can. In the virtual Faster Way to Fat Loss with Anna, my 6-week fitness and nutrition program, you will learn how to pair effective 30-minute workouts with all-natural, evidence-based nutritional strategies to leverage what you eat and when you eat to reset your metabolism and burn fat fast, even that stubborn belly fat. I am a dual certified nurse practitioner passionate about teaching sustainable strategies to promote fat loss and prevent disease. I have cheered on thousands of clients who have done just that with the Faster Way program. In my 6-week program, the average client currently sheds 7 inches of body fat. 93% report more energy, and 89% state that their mental health has improved. 100% of clients report they feel this program is sustainable. Curious to try the program but not sure if the strategies will work for you? Try the Faster Way strategies for free. Head to www.hammersandhugs.com and sign up for my free 7-day fat loss accelerator course today and start your own transformation story. We are back with Stephen Scoggins. We're going to play this or that. Stephen, there's 2 options. You don't have to think about it too hard, this or that. All right, first one, candy or baked goods?
Candy.
Favorite candy?
Oh gosh. You
Hitting you with the
this
hard
or that.
ones.
You said this or that. You didn't say. You
I
said
lied. It's a good business practice to lie
Actually,
to the guests on your podcast.
I'm actually kind of a cookie monster. I'm a bad on cookies.
Oh, so cookies. Oh, we just changed it. Well, you're allowed. I lied to you, so you're allowed to change your answer. Okay, cookies. Country or pop music?
Between the two of them, country.
Country. Favorite artist?
Oh man, Need to Breathe is my favorite artist.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's also a good one.
So they're kind of smack dab in the middle of everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Kindle or old-fashioned book?
Old-fashioned book, so I can use a highlighter.
A true story. Okay, we're throwing it back to the construction days. Bosch or DeWalt?
Oh man, well Bosch didn't exist, so I have to go with DeWalt.
Really?
At the time. Yeah. We had
Makita.
We had Makita.
Oh,
DeWalt,
okay.
And
I did not realize they were that new.
It began with an R. It doesn't exist
Ryobi?
anymore. No, Ryobi wasn't there yet either.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm DeWalt and Ryobi fans over here, but we started out with super cheap tools. It did not take us long to realize this is worth investing money.
Yeah.
After we destroyed multiple tools. All right. House by a lake in the woods or house by the beach?
House by lake in the woods. That's my riding place. I always go to the mountain when I'm going to the mountains when I'm riding.
Riding? What do you ride?
No, writing.
Oh, writing.
Yeah.
Or riding.
I used to ride crotch rockets or motorcycles, but I'm not allowed to do that anymore. I have to stick to sports.
Yeah, writing's a little safer. Safer.
I'm a grandfather now.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's my husband hears that. He's not allowed to buy a motorcycle for that reason. Would you rather be a ninja or a pirate?
Ninja. I used to dress up one like as a kid when I was a kid.
Like last year? Oh, when you were a kid.
No, when I was a kid. Not like last year. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young either.
Listen, no judgment here. Ninjas are cool. Convertible or a truck?
Oh man, I got both. He's
got both. That's
every day answer. For everyday driving, it is the Ford.
From
not everyday riding, it's the sports car.
Stuck to unstoppable here. The man has a convertible and a truck. That's right. That's right. My dream car is actually a truck. I really want a truck one day.
Which one?
My minivan's my truck. I don't even care. The thing is, I show up to Home Depot and I'm like a juxtaposition because I show up in a minivan.
Yeah.
I come out wearing heels, but I know more about the products I'm looking for than the dude standing in the aisle. You know what I mean? Like maybe if I had a truck, it wouldn't be quite as confusing for people when I walk in. Yeah.
All right. So your goal needs to be a Ford Platinum because that's not spending too much, but getting in the creature comforts
Ford
and the
Platinum.
Yep, Ford Platinum or the Chevy High Country.
Huh.
Those two give you the creature comforts and the ability to use it as a truck.
I love it. Can my producer write that down?
Show notes.
That's the show notes. That's my goal.
By the way, Ford and Chevy, if you guys want to throw some ad money back at us, feel free.
Let's go. Or a truck. Or you just give me a truck. That'd be great. Night out or night in?
Actually, I actually like going out. My wife's much more of a stay in kind of person.
Where do you go out to? Where do I need to go?
I like sushi joints, and my wife got me into fine dining, as she refers to it, like nice restaurants.
Fine dining.
Yeah, it's I when she first met me, I would sit down and I would just go, ah, and it wouldn't matter what it was. I was like, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's just sustenance, it's just food. I got stuff to do, like, you know.
Right.
She's like, slow down. She goes, that was a XYZ meal. Like,
Right.
that's a big deal. Like, you just ate from one of the top like chefs or whatever. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So she's
I love
cultured
it.
me. She's
She's
cultured
helping
me.
you enjoy the finer things in life.
Yeah. So when we do
Yeah.
we go out to the fine dining places together, or Cine Bistro, which is like a upscale movie theater. I don't know. I dig it.
Okay. And really quick, you're located where again? You're in North Carolina.
Yeah. Raleigh, North Carolina.
And the
AKA
best
Raleigh,
restaurant.
North Carolina.
There you go. So for those of us listening, okay, North Carolina, Raleigh, what restaurant do we need to go to?
Harry's.
Perry's.
Yes.
There you go, guys. Perry's. If you're going to go to Raleigh, North Carolina, Perry's for
Yep.
some fine dining.
Yep.
All right, last question. Football or basketball?
Football. Because I'm like
Favorite-
5 foot. I'm 5 foot nothing, so I don't care much about basketball. Dunking
Who
is
does
not in my
care about
future.
basketball? Come on. Dude, this is coming from a football coach's wife, but yeah, I have some friends that would not like me for that statement. But what team do you follow?
I've been so busy with trying to get these businesses successful. I haven't paid attention to sports in a really long time, to be honest.
I mean, you're a smart man. You're a smart man.
Well,
A lot
thank
of
you.
time is lost with sports.
Yeah, this is true. No, I mean, the sports that I do watch are typically stuff like I was every one of my kids' football games. Like,
Yeah.
he just, they just graduated high school a year ago. So big years.
I love that. Yeah. Well, we've obviously we've gone through so many incredible things. We've unpacked a lot. You had mentioned the poverty mindset, and you have talked before about how that contributes to this sense of being stuck.
Mhm.
So when we pull it all together, this Transform You live event, it is a live event that is held in your
Mhm.
this incredible building that you have here in North Carolina, right? Is where
Yep.
the building is.
Yep.
Yeah. You have this framework that you use all around the concept of transformation. And I want to pull it all together and kind of talk about this poverty mindset, how it contributes to us feeling stuck,
Sure.
and then the tools and the questions that you employ to help us take that first step from going from stuck to unstoppable. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think the first thing you have to understand about a poverty mindset is nothing more than saying I'm not worth more. It's I'm not worth it. Right. So you don't feel like that you have the resources to grow yourself. You don't feel like you have the energy to pursue a mentor. You come up with all these excuses. So then at the end of the day, the number one thing that I see that people struggle with a poverty mindset is this reason to have excuses. Right.
Mm-hmm.
People who quote unquote become unstoppable are people who just refuse to absolutely give up. They kind of really clarify what it is they want. They clarify why they want it, because your motivations are super important. And then they start laying out a strategy and a plan to get there. And I think that's one of the reasons why, we do Transform You Live on an annual basis. Like I said, we just did it a few weeks ago and it was amazing. We had people from Peru and the UK and live, and it was amazing. And what I've discovered is we are all trying to overcome something at any given moment in our life. It doesn't matter what the it is. It matters what the persistence is. Are you persistently trying to grow it, go around it, go under it, go through it? And if you are, then in time you will shake out of a poverty mindset or what I call an area of lack, right? Here's the case in point. When I was in a poverty mindset, I borrowed with no intention to repay. When I'm now in a more traditional affluence mindset, I only spend money on stuff that I think is actually going to return more of it. Right. So my house, for example, that we live in now, it's a nice home, but I didn't necessarily put this house together and build this house specifically with the resources that for my businesses. I actually did it through the equity buying power of real estate.
Yeah.
Right. Steve told me a long time ago, buy a home, if you will, on the edge of where the good and the bad start and stop. Right. So buy a house there, buy it for, $30,000, $45,000, below asking, or somewhere where you get a value of it, invest a little money and resell it. And in the state of North Carolina, you can do that every 2 years with your own home. And by the time you get into the 8th home, you have a very, very nice home and it's completely paid for, rather than following the poverty mindset version, which is I'm going to get a mortgage, and this is the only house I'll ever own. That's where I'm going to plant roots. Or my wife would say feet first. This is where they're taking me out feet first kind of thing. That's just one piece. You know, people who have a poverty mindset are constantly thinking about how they can spend it, how they can spend it, how they can spend it, how they can spend it. They're not thinking about tomorrow, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. People who have a more affluent minded mentality, they're going to spend a lot more time investing in the things that are going to create more time, talent, and resources on the outside of that. So that's the easiest way to do it.
And I'm also hearing a concept of short-term sacrifice to reach a long-term goal.
Yep.
And I resonate with what you're saying, because we're literally doing exactly what you just said through our own house renovations. This is our third one. And the whole point is to build a dream home. Yeah, that's why I need the truck. That's why I need the truck. That is exactly right. But it's so connected to that idea of we are making short-term sacrifices. Could we afford a home that is much bigger than this tiny little, currently 1,400 square feet till we finish the basement next month? Yes. And the next house we're going to buy is also going to only be 1,400 square feet. But the thing is, with each house, we have been building up more and more, ultimately profit that we are, putting into an investment account. But it is short-term sacrifice. We got little kids running around. There are days that I think, oh my goodness, I cannot handle this lack of space. But it's that whole concept that you're talking about, is short-term sacrifice for a long-term goal, is seeing that long-term goal and infusing it with purpose. That's the other thing I just took away from that is I say all the time, especially to my followers, people have read it on the blog many times, is we've often heard that passion fuels purpose, but I believe that purpose more effectively fuels passion.
Yes.
When you are really clear on your why, what is your goal? We know what our goal is for this big house that we want to build. Yep. And it has nothing to do with the square footage. It has nothing to do with the status thing. We have a very clear purpose for why we want the house that we want. And it's ministry focused. It's all about our kids and being that house that people come to us, that we can serve them. So it's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain is what I heard you just said, and get really clear on your purpose. And I think the more it is about other people, the more passionate you'll be about it and the more effective it'll be, because it's about somebody else, and we all want to serve at heart. Yeah,
for sure. Do you know the average time of short-term sacrifice to really begin to build momentum for success is? You know what the average time is?
No, but I really would like to know the answer to that.
27 months. If you will sacrifice and do what is smart over what you want for 27 months consistently, you will lay the groundwork to enjoy pretty much and get pretty much whatever you want out of life. That 27 month time frame, you're going to be spending money differently, investing money differently, giving money differently. Same with time and talent, right? Most people meet their major breaks into whatever network or whatever their thing is going to be. Actually in the process of serving. It's not typically at a networking dinner that you're handing out business cards to everybody. It's typically at a Walmart or a Kmart or a Target or some store, and some guy or gal that you've never met before drops a bag. You stop for a minute to pick up the bag, and they're like, "Oh, I think I recognize you," or something like that. And then you started a conversation. All your key relationships and all of your key opportunities only come if you're looking for them, and you have to be looking for them consistently. And again, 27 months of consistent effort, and you can almost build whatever you want.
I love that. Patience, perseverance, really everything that you have just highlighted. You've mentioned before, there are 3 questions that we need to be asking ourselves. In order to even start this process of moving from stuck to unstoppable and experience transformation in our lives. What are those 3 questions that we need to be asking?
So I stumbled across this. I was on so I wrote my first, this is weird. I write books on ellipticals and in the mountains and stuff like that. Like an elliptical, and I'm just writing.
That is a little weird. How do you write it? How do you write while you're on an elliptical?
ADHD, it helps me focus to have my feet going. I don't know, I'm weird. But I asked this question.
Your handwriting must look terrible. Wait, I'm still
it's on the iPhone. It's in the iPhone, right?
Oh, interesting.
My thumbs are going nuts, but I asked this question to myself, and this is almost 20 years ago, and this is how I stumbled across these 3 questions. And the question was very simple. What does it take to change the essence of a man? Because when I asked that question, what I was really saying is, what does it take to change the essence of me? Because I knew I wasn't who I wanted to be, and I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be. And in that moment, I feel like God actually gave me these questions. They're very, very simple, right? The first one is who am I? Like, who are you really? Not who are you when other people expect you to be someone. Like, who are you really? Are you a painter that is painting, or are you a painter that's an attorney all of a sudden? Like, are you living by your expectations or living by somebody else's expectations? Do you know your strengths, your talents, your gifts, your struggles, your blind spots? Do you know yourself in and out? And surprisingly, you find out that most of the American population does not, because we are inundated with distraction on a regular basis. So that is one question. I would spend 30 to 45 days just focused on that inside of that 27-month time frame, right? Just
and you're defining that by saying, like, would I answer that I am a wife and mom who blogs and hosts a podcast? Or would you dig deeper to say, deeper. I am an imperfect woman who's been living transformed by the grace of Jesus?
Yeah. Yeah. Very deep. Go as deep as you possibly can, because we do tend to identify ourselves by our attributes, right? Race, gender, geography, high school you went to. Like, what I'm saying is, who is the authentic you? If we were to strip everything away and you couldn't say I'm a wife, a mother, a husband, a brother, or whatever, you couldn't say that. And you couldn't talk about where you worked or how much money you made, or what your career was going to be. And if you stripped all of that away, who do you say that I am?
Yeah.
Right. Who do you say that I am? For me, I discovered that I have one of my heart's desires is to transparently give that which was given to me. Right. That comes from a deep place. I have a sincere desire to be a credible father. In fact, my epitaph statement kind of sums up who I desire to be and who I am becoming on a regular basis, which is, here lies a man who set out to change the world, comma, and did. Right.
Yeah.
What's in that statement is ultimately what I will be pursuing with who am I?
Yeah.
I'm not the short Napoleon Bonaparte like person I used to be, where it was just, okay, I'm going to just be out of fear and insecurity, and that's how I was going to engage with the world. No, I'm someone who can add value to you if you're willing to add value, like to the connect. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a deeper thing. Once you get clearer on that question, and again, I'm going to recommend that this is almost like a soul search, right?
Yeah.
For 40 days straight. This is something my grandfather used to do. He used to call it the 40-day walk of faith. I would do it with him. If I had something really big in my life that we were trying to figure out, he would always force me to focus on that one thing for 40 days. Right. And in many cases, fast from that one thing for many days. How I met my wife. Right. I wanted to be married. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to have a family, and that wasn't in the picture. And then he said, 40 days, let's pray about it. Let's do some work. Let's uncover more about who you are and kind of how you're wired, and what are your defense mechanisms, and how can you work on this defense mechanisms to attract that kind of person. And I met my wife on day 42.
Get that clarity.
So, yeah. So that clarity is power. And then once you have a clear sense of who am I, the next one is why am I here? And that's where I think your conversation of purpose and passion and meaning and significance and all that comes from. I can save everybody a decade off that search. Why you're here has nothing to do with what you can get.
Yeah.
It has absolutely nothing to do with what you can achieve. It has nothing to do with what kind of prestige you can build. It has nothing to do with any of that. What it has to do with more than anything else is, in what way can you impart your best self to the world on a consistent basis? Yeah. Right. Once you get clear on that, which that one's actually doesn't take super long. The next one is, okay, what do I do about it? What are my next steps? You launched a podcast after having a successful blog. And then, obviously being in the I call it the hospital industry, but it's not the hospital industry. You know what I mean?
Sure. Health and wellness. Yeah.
Health and wellness industry. And you said, okay, well, there's another part of me left to be exhibited that offers service to another. Right. You think through the questions that you ask with your guest to kind of make sure, hey, how can I pull the best out of this guest and pivot that so I can share the most out of that? That's a action step of how do I do this? Right. So who am I? Why am I here? And what do I do about it? What do I do about it? I'm going to start a podcast, right? I'm going to start speaking. I'm going to write some books. I'm going to do some other things. Those are attributes. What we often do is we do them in reverse, right? So as a result, because we're doing them in reverse, we're like, okay, what do I do about it? Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing at all. Well, if I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing at all, then why am I even here in the first place? Everybody's got to figure it out. Sally down the street, she's got to figure it out. John over here, he's got to figure it out. Right. And the reality is they don't have it figured out either. Right. They're just.
Who of us has anything figured out?
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, the crazy is you can make progress on that as long as you're pursuing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love to consolidate what I just heard you say is number one, think about what you want written on your gravestone. Sounds a little morbid, but hey, that's what we're all about, is trying to figure out why we're here. We're all going to die. So you might as well think about what you want written on your gravestone. And then how does that contribute to who you are at your core? And, I also hear this concept when you think through that question is it can't be anything that you can take with you. It has to be something that you leave behind. And you spoke to that. The only legacy that matters is the one that outlives you. So what do you want written on there that you can leave behind? Because frankly, there's a lot of things that I'm really good at doing, but when I'm gone, they're gone. Like somebody else can do them. What are ways that because of who you are, you can leave this legacy behind? I think is another way of answering that question. And then the why, like, why do you want to be that person ultimately? Yeah. And then what do I do next? It seems like there is where you have to start thinking about what are you good at? What are your skills? Because you don't want to ignore that. Yeah. But that needs to be brought in then to enable somebody to truly live out who they are and why they're here. And that's when that skill set, I love the order of that and encourage everyone to think through those questions. You can visit Stephen at www.stephenscoggins.com. That's STEPHENSCOGGINS. All of these links, of course, will be on the show notes on hammersandhugs.com. And if somebody wants to go through the Transform You event or your course, etc., is that all on your website? Is that pretty clear for them to get to?
Yeah, so we actually just got the replay up from our first event. We are going to be running a special in about 2 weeks. To allow people to take part in not only the live event, and I had Tom and Lisa Bilyeu, Anthony Trucks, Evan Carmichael. I had a whole host of amazing thought leaders as part of the event. Not only can you have access to that, but you also have access to additional resources and tools to help kind of get you on the go. And so, if you go to stephenscoggins.com and sign up for the 52 principles, which is just the principle a week. I'll make sure that you get access to the live recording and all that good stuff. And then we'll do Transform You live come the fall of 2022, bigger, badder than ever. Yeah. So that's the best way.
I love it. Well, I want you guys to definitely check that out on his website. You can go through these questions. It's written out, it's organized, and be able to check it all out at stephenscoggins.com. Again, that will be on the show notes. Obviously, this will actually air a little later than when we're recording it, but you can still get access to all of those videos and information. Stephen, it's truly an honor to have you here. Like I said, you have not only inspired me and been influential to me, I have absolutely no doubt that you will be, Steve, to a million people. I think you're well on your way. So I thank you. And I pray God's continued blessing over you and your home and your family. And I'm just excited for all that He has in store for you.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that your stuff's gonna blow up as well. So I really appreciate you spending some time with me and let me share a little bit of my heart.
Well, thank you. Well, my goal is next time you're on here, I'll have that truck.
Let's go. We'll be recording the episode from inside the truck.
Listen, write that down. It's happening. It will happen from inside my truck with Stephen Scoggins. Stephen, thank you so much.
All right. Take care. See ya. Peace.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Imperfectly Empowered podcast. It is my honor to be here with you. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button below so you don't miss a show, and leave a comment with your thoughts from today's episode below. If you are listening via your preferred podcasting platform, would you help keep us on the air by rating our show and leaving an honest review of your thoughts from today? In case you haven't heard it lately, your story matters and you are loved. This is your host, Anna Fulmer, and I will see you here next time on the Imperfectly Empowered podcast.